Unfound is brought to you by its supporters at Patreon, PayPal, YouTube, and its gracious advertisers. Ashley Nicole Jones Linden was a 32-year-old from Mulberry, Florida. She had 3 children and was a practicing Christian. On September 9th, 2022, Ashley allegedly ran off from a hotel on the east side of Tampa. Ashley didn't return. She was never seen again. Or was she? I'm Ed Dentzel, and this is Unfound. How many of you remember the viral phenomenon from like 10 years ago regarding whether that dress was blue and black or white and gold? Remember that? If you don't know, the dress was actually blue and black. But the viral photo showed how our brains don't exactly work all the same. And you don't have to be diagnosed as colorblind to see colors in a different way than others. With Unfound and its disappearances, we've also been confronted with kind of the same thing, although not with colors, but actually with humans themselves and or their actions in videos and photos. With you, the audience, having diverse views on what is shown. Was that really Cameron Remmer on the sidewalk in San Francisco years after he disappeared? Did Brian Schaefer stick something in that woman's purse or not? Did Michaela Bally really look okay in the screenshots from the security cams? And Unfound has had many others like these, with all of them still being up for debate. Well, with Ashley Jones Linden, the true understanding of her disappearance rests on a photo. And the entire situation is a mixed picture. And now a summary of the case. This disappearance is not on the Charlie Project, but it is on NamUs. Ashley Jones Linden had 3 siblings, and she was one of the oldest. Unlike her one sister, Ashley was a girly girl, liking to dress up and parade around the house. She got this from one of her aunts. Yet, Ashley was also close to her father. And, in fact, the downward spiral in Ashley's life started when her dad died in 2000. Although Ashley got married and had her children, her mental health problems eventually overtook her life and ended that relationship. In turn, Ashley got married to a man, Scott, who had just gotten out of jail, with there being public records showing he was abusive. So, in the early morning of September 9th, 2022, Ashley and Scott were at a Red Roof Inn on the east side of Tampa. Scott called Ashley's mother to say that Ashley ran off and didn't come back. He tried to look for her to no avail. She was never seen again. Well, that's not quite right. 2 months later, a friend of Ashley's family thought he saw her on a Tampa street and took a photo. Ashley's mother and others believe the woman in the photo is Ashley. However, the photographer also sent the photo to Scott, which raised the prospect that he might have tracked Ashley down that day, although Scott insists otherwise. Either way, whether the September or November 2022 scenario, Ashley is missing now. Here at Unfound, we've been challenged with looking at video and photos to determine if the person displayed is the missing person or not. Contemplate whether the picture taken by the family friend is of Ashley or of another woman, while you also try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1. Did one of Hillsborough County's deputies actually encounter Ashley on September 12th of 2022? Number 2. Should we be suspicious that Scott got a new girlfriend even before the alleged November 17th, 2022 sighting of Ashley occurred? And number 3, if that woman were Ashley on November 17th, then why has she not been located since, despite everyone in Ashley's family looking for her? Ashley's family believes the woman is Ashley in the November photo, and they are open to a variety of theories regarding her disappearance. The guest for this episode is Ashley's mother, Teresa Jones. Unfound News. Please be looking for the next episode of Unfound Now on the YouTube channel within the next couple of days. I'll be analyzing the disappearance of Tyler Goodrich, who went missing on November 3rd, 2023. Thank you to Charlotte for the recommendation. Next, this coming Thursday, March 28th, I'll be zooming into a class at Texas A&M University to talk about media, podcasting, and journalism in general. As you can see, I'm putting my business degree to good use. Thank you to Assistant Eric for lining the appearance up. Finally, thank you to Assistant Carrie, who attended the memorial service of Marianne Chapman. You can find Carrie's recounting of the event in the discussion group on Facebook. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Ashley Jones Linden, Teresa. Teresa, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you.
The listeners should know that before we started, I'm up in here in Pennsylvania seeing my father, and of course Teresa lives in Florida, so it's beautiful in Florida today, and it's cold up here in Pennsylvania, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Teresa. But you did say it was a little chilly this morning, right?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and I hope to maybe be back in Florida maybe in another week. So this is, as everybody has probably already seen, this is a Tampa area disappearance where I live and kind of close to where Teresa lives these days. And so these Tampa area, Hillsborough County, Pinellas County disappearances are very close to me. Of course, all disappearances are, but when one happens near where I live, it gets, I think, special attention from me. So, Teresa, thank you for joining everybody today.
And thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And everybody should know we're doing this interview on March 19th of 2024. Let's start here, Teresa. Just talk a little bit about your family. Of course, Ashley is your daughter. Do you have any other kids? What can you say
yes,
about...
Ashley is...
Please, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Ashley's my oldest daughter. I have 4 children altogether. She has an older brother named James, and she has 2 younger siblings, her brother Dustin and her younger sister Victoria.
Wow, okay. 4 kids for you, and you split it up, 2 girls and 2 boys.
I went boy, girl, right on down the line.
That's a nice pattern you had there, Teresa.
Thank you.
Just maybe talk a little bit, maybe compare and contrast your kids. How did they all get along, Ashley, with the rest of them? Similar personalities, very different. What would you say?
Oh, very different, very different. Ashley was my girly girl. My youngest daughter, she was my tomboy.
Yeah.
Ashley and my youngest son, they kind of got along more so than the older boy and the youngest daughter. So they kind of matched up, and then the youngest son and the younger daughter, they kind of matched up with their attitudes and personality.
That's interesting as a parent probably seeing those things develop, right?
Oh, yes. I mean, you watch one sit there and play with dolls. You watch one going out there playing football with boys.
Uh-huh.
So.
Right. And you may not know this, but I do take an interest in how people get named. I was named very boringly. My father's name is Ed. I'm named Ed. But how did you name Ashley? Of course, Ashley seems to be a very common name now, but at the time, how did you come up with Ashley?
It's absolutely hilarious how you asked me this. I didn't name Ashley, actually.
Wow.
Her father and his brother did. I named Ashley Marty Lynn after my deceased biological father. His name was Martin.
Okay.
And on the way to the hospital, my husband automatically just pops out and he says, I think I like the name Ashley. And then my brother-in-law, because those two were taking me to the hospital, he was like, Me too. He says, there's just something about Marty that doesn't click. And
I
those two
see.
were debating the name back and forth, and before I knew it, when we got to the hospital, they came up with Ashley Nicole. So that's how we did
Wow.
it.
And you just kind of went along with that.
I did. I went along with it because
Wow.
he let me name my oldest son.
Okay.
So, and I did kind of tell him that he can name our oldest daughter,
Okay.
but I went with the Marty Lynn, and he ended up switching it to Ashley Nicole.
Okay. That guy must be a hell of a salesman. On the way to the hospital, you're changing names. I don't know if I've ever heard that before because I
Yeah,
don't
them
know
two
any
were
kids.
debating. I mean, to be honest, I really, at the time, I probably didn't even care what was going on. I just
Yes.
wanted to get to the hospital.
Right. I gotcha. Okay. All right. So that's how. All right. So that's how she got her name, and of course, like we
Yes,
know
her
these
daddy.
days, there are a lot of Ashleys out there. Whereas
Yes.
me being a child of the '80s, being 53, I don't know any Ashleys in the
See,
1980s.
it became popular
Yeah.
back when I had Ashley. That was a very, very popular name.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Let's now just talk about Ashley in particular. She's you said previously that she was kind of your girly girl. What do you mean by that? And maybe get into her personality and things.
She was the type that liked to do her little makeup, her hair, dress up. Loved to have everything neat and organized in the bedroom. She was my little girly girl.
Uh-huh.
The prissy dresses, like to get the dresses that when she spun around when she was a little girl, they would flare out and she would go around and around.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Did she get that from you or somebody else in your family or what?
no, actually, I was born and raised. Well, not born on the farm, but I was raised on a farm, so I was a cowgirl. So she didn't get it from me. She got it from her aunt, or I should say her great aunt.
Okay.
The one that I was named after, my Aunt Eileen. My Aunt Eileen was that way. She was very, very, very beautiful woman and just carried herself just gracefully.
Yeah.
And I think Ashley kind of admired that when she was little, and she would pay attention to my aunt, my aunt doing her fingernails and stuff like that. And I think that's where she got it from.
Okay. All right. How did you feel about that? You were cool with that?
Oh, yes,
Okay,
yes.
great.
I mean, my aunt was a very beautiful woman, I mean, yes, I didn't mind at all.
Okay. Now, what about her personality? Were there some interests and things that Ashley took, she a little girl into maybe early teenage years? What kind of stuff was she into?
As a little girl, of course, she was into her Barbies. And through her teenage years, she was kind of like doing the regular girl thing. It was the makeup and having her friends over and hanging out with her friends and her girlfriends. When she hit her adult life, she started getting into the Bible.
Wow.
Yeah, she wanted to be a missionary. She wanted to travel and, help preach the word.
Okay.
And she, all the way up till her disappearance, Ashley is very much religious, very much into the Bible.
Okay.
She doesn't, right down to she doesn't eat pork. She goes by the biblical diet. That would be one way for people to maybe recognize her if she was in some kind of cafe or something like that. She goes by the strict biblical diet.
Okay.
She does not wear makeup any longer. She, she's very modest. She keeps herself very modest. She doesn't wear low-cut shorts or anything like that,
Okay. I should ask, when all your kids and raising your kids, was this in Florida? Was this somewhere else? Where was this?
It was in Florida.
Was it?
My kids was raised in Lakeland, Florida,
Yeah.
all the way up until my youngest one. She was about 5 years old, and we moved to Mulberry. We lived in Mulberry for 12 years. That was through my children's fun years, as I would call it. And from there, we went back to Lakeland area. And then we ended up in Plant City.
I know the areas very well. I played disc golf over there, and in fact, I spoke last semester over there at the college in Lakeland to criminal justice majors over there. So I know the college over there. So yeah, over there.
My two youngest still live in Lakeland.
Okay, interesting. Okay,
over there towards the Lake Gibson area, as a matter of fact.
Okay. What about work? What did she do for work? Did she have a job in her teenage years or in her 20s? What can you say?
Yes. She always held down. She was a hard worker, actually. Mainly waitressing and fast food.
Okay. All right, let's move on to this. She does have some children that I
Yes.
understand. How many and how old are they now? We don't have to get into their names, of course, but because
Okay.
they're underage. But just ages and what can you say about that?
Okay. She has got a 14-year-old fixing to be 15 in June.
Wow.
She has got a 12-year-old, and she has got a 10-year-old. The 14-year-old young lady, she
Mm-hmm.
got two girls and a little boy. The
Okay.
boy's the youngest. It's hard not saying their names.
Yeah, we just want to keep that out of it,
Yeah,
because this
I
is very
understand.
public. Yes.
Uh, they're confused. They miss their mom. They're confused. They're
Okay.
scared. Um,
Yeah.
they ask a lot of questions that we can't answer because we don't have the answers
Right.
to. As a
Right.
matter of fact, I just seen the children Wednesday, the 13th, for a birthday party, and it
Yeah.
was hard.
Yeah.
It's real
Of
hard.
course. Of course. Right. And I know this past weekend we had texted back and forth. I know family is very important to you. I think you said you had grandkids or something that
Oh,
came to
yes.
see you. So I know how important your children and
Yes.
grandchildren are to you. They came over and I think spent the weekend or something.
Oh, yes. Two of my grandsons did. Yes.
Look
Yes.
at you.
I have got 12 grandchildren.
Wow. 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 Have
Yes.
to thank your kids for that. Okay.
Well, one of them is a step,
Mm.
but it's okay. He's still
Yeah.
mine.
Great. Of
But
course.
11 altogether are mine.
Great. That's fantastic.
Oh, I love
Excellent.
them. They
Uh,
make my world. They're my everything. I live and breathe for them.
yeah. So I have to ask regarding Ashley's children, three kids. Who is taking care of them
Their
these days?
biological father. Their
Oh,
biological father has got them.
all three of
He's a
them.
very good man. Very, very good man.
Wow. All right. Well, why don't you talk a little bit about that? Let's talk about how Ashley and this guy met. You say he's a great guy. So how did the two meet? When did they meet?
They met through Ashley's teenage years.
Mhm.
When we lived in Lakeland, he was our neighbor. He lived catty corner from us, and they started dating.
Wow.
And oh wow, Ashley and I don't know if I could say his name, the
You can use his
biological
first
father.
name. Use his first name.
Okay, his name's Matt.
Okay.
Anyway, Ashley and Matt were together for what seemed like over 10 years.
Yeah.
And all three of the children are by Matt.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up, of course, kind of like drifting apart slowly.
Yeah.
Both working, young mothers, and
Right.
you could kind of see. I mean, they didn't fight or anything like that, but you could see that they were drifting apart. And Matt had found somebody new.
Oh my.
And was honest with Ashley about it and everything, and they ended up separating, and that tore Ashley apart.
I
It
bet.
really did. She came to be really, really depressed.
Yeah.
Severe depression, as a matter of
Yeah.
fact.
That happens.
It took a toll on her, and Ashley already suffers from some mental problems that we, or I say we, actually the doctors, the psychiatrists, and everybody believed it was from her father's death. That one of them is schizophrenia. Paranoid schizophrenia. And when she goes into a bad episode, it can get, I'm not going to kid you, it can get bad to where Ashley might not even remember her own name.
Okay.
Until she snaps out of it. So therefore, we all, even Ashley, she understands her problems. She understands she needs her medicine and everything to be able to control it. But with all of us sitting down and talking, like I said, even Ashley and Monk said, we decided that it would be best if the biological father had custody of the children, and Ashley could see him at any point in time. They kind of shared, I should say. The kids was over all the time until Scott
Okay, and we're gonna of course talk about him. Do you remember maybe the first time that you noticed that? And I'm very sorry that her father died. Do you remember the first time maybe you thought, something going on with Ashley mentally? Do you remember what year that was, or anything? You remember a specific circumstance?
Yeah. That's kind of hard for me to talk about. Mother's Day of 2000. Wow. My husband was killed. It was in the newspaper in Lakeland on Gary Road on the railroad tracks. He was hit and drugged by a train. Oh my God. And I had to identify his body. While I was in the room, my two oldest children were out in the waiting room, and I don't know what the nurse was thinking or whoever she was, but she took my oldest son, at the time, was only 11 years old, and she took my husband's belongings to him, and you could still pour the blood out of his shoes, and handed it to my son in front of my daughter. Immediately. It was the following day, right afterwards, that we started noticing that Ashley, there wasn't something right. She started talking to herself, I should say, mumbling to herself, like she was talking to somebody, but somebody wasn't there, I should say.
Yeah.
That night, after we had found out that her dad had died and everything, and identified the body, Ashley was in the bedroom, and her oldest brother went in there and found Ashley trying to hang herself by the computer cord off the ceiling fan.
Oh, my.
And I took her to the hospital immediately, and when they had talked to her, she said that the person told her to do it, or else he was going to kill her family. Mm-hmm. And that's when she started hearing voices. And from the voices telling her what to do, Ashley started getting really bad. I'm not going to lie to you. She started cutting herself.
Yeah.
She started cutting herself. She wasn't eating right, vomiting all the time. I had her back and forth to different doctors. One time she was Baker acted. They finally got her on some medication that was working with her.
Yeah, because that can be a little bit of an experiment, right? Not every medication works for every person the same way, right?
It was a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
It really was. It was a roller coaster ride. I mean,
yeah.
I hadn't even gotten to fully bury her father yet, and all of a sudden something's going on with my daughter, you know?
What did your three other kids have to say about Ashley? Any insight, anything that she was saying to them back at this time, or maybe the few years after that, if they were close?
You talked about when she was younger.
When this all happened, yeah.
No, Ashley stayed really, really withdrawn for a long time.
Did she? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, she was really, she was a daddy's girl. Really close to her
daddy. Okay. Right. Okay. And what about later, of course, when she met Matt and they became a couple, they had 3 kids. Was she able to manage that during this time that she was married? Once she became, I guess, an adult, she was able to manage it at least for a while.
Yes. Ashley can't. I mean, even in her teenage years and so on, she can. She can manage it. She understands. She's not in any kind of denial. She knows her problems. And she has even read up, studied. She's done everything that she could possibly do to understand her conditions to help herself. Yeah. And she maintained a home, for years and years and years. Maintained a home, took care of the babies, took care of Matt. Yeah. Matt would work. Ashley would be there with the children, taking care of the children. Everything was great.
Yeah.
Great.
And if you can say, I know this is very difficult, so we're just going to ask one more question. What year was it that Matt and Ashley finally ended their relationship? What year was it, approximately?
I'm going to guess. I'm not positive, okay? I'm really not.
Okay.
I'm going to guess around 2014, 2015,
all right,
somewhere around there.
So almost 10 years ago then.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay. So what did she do after that? You've already brought up this guy, Scott. We'll get to him in a second. But did she come and live with you after they have this breakup?
She stayed in the same home that Matt and her had shared together for a little while, but it became too much on her. The kids and Matt at this point in time have already went and moved in with Matt's mother. So Ashley was by herself, and it became too much on her. So I went and got her.
Okay.
And she came to stay with me.
Okay. They were living in Florida too. Did she live far away, or how?
No,
what are we talking?
No. We didn't live far away from me.
Okay.
Like I said, Matt allowed anytime we wanted the children, they would come stay with us. There was no issues whatsoever with being able to see the kids.
Okay. So what you're saying is Ashley and Matt kind of just worked this out themselves. There was no official
friends.
every other weekend type of court
Oh no,
mandated.
it was more often than that. The heck was court saying whatever. They were still good friends. It was just that Matt traveled on to somebody else,
Okay.
Regardless of the hurt feelings or anything like that, they were still friends. They still got along for the kids and everything. I mean, Matt would still, Christmas time, Matt would have Christmas dinner with us and stuff still. I mean, still included in birthday parties and what have you. We didn't shut him out. He was still part of everything.
Of course. Okay. Great. So let's move on to this. So she comes back and lives with you. Of course, she went missing in 2022. So what went on for approximately this 7 years? She went back to live with you, but it sounds maybe like this continued like in a downward direction.
She come to stay with me. She was doing good.
Oh, she was. Okay.
Yeah, she was doing good. At this point in time, we live in Plant City, and she had gotten her a job. She's doing great. She starts pen paling. Now, I'm not supposed to know about this, but she's pen paling somebody, okay? That's in prison.
Okay.
I find out through her younger sister.
Okay.
She's keeping it from me for some reason. I don't know why. I won't know until I
you talk to
Ashley. And ask her.
Right.
And at this point in time, it was Scott. Scott was in prison for abusing. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you this.
We'll just leave that. We'll just leave that out of it. How did this? Let me just ask you this: how did she even know Scott? How did this even happen? Do you know?
All right. When we lived in Mulberry, I never got to see him, but apparently one of their friends, Scott was related to, and it was a brief acquaintance. I mean, it wasn't none of these days or weeks of knowing each other or anything like that. But apparently they met when they were younger. One time in Mulberry. All right, now you spring way ahead. Somehow she finds out about him and that he's in prison, and she starts pen paling him while he's in prison.
Wow. Okay. What year do you think this pen paling started? Just approximately.
Oh. Let's see.
2016, 2017, 2018?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
To be honest, that sounds about good, right? In that area.
Okay. Let me just ask you this. Was it well before COVID started?
Oh, yes.
All right. That's good enough. We can always use, as I've found doing these interviews, I've always found COVID is a good way, everybody remembers that. So well before COVID is when she and he started pen paling. Did you ever have an occasion to talk to Ashley about this and say, I don't think this is a good idea, or what?
No, like I said, I was unaware that she's pen paling this guy at this point in time.
Okay. All right. And did you find out about this before she went missing?
They ended up getting married.
They ended up getting married. All right.
It's a crazy story. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I guess he got out of jail for whatever he did. I don't really want to get into his criminal record at this point, but he eventually gets out of jail and they become a couple.
Yes, he gets out of prison, and he was living in Clearwater.
Okay.
And out of the clear blue, she says, "Mom," she says, "I'm going to go stay the night with my friend Scott, and he's coming to pick me up." And I says, "Well, okay, where does Scott live?" And she says, "In Clearwater." Now, mind you, my daughter is an adult. I can't tell her no, she can't do something.
I know.
Yep. So what I did try to do was revert it and ask her, well, how about if he comes hangs out here? I tried that one, which didn't work. So she goes to stay the night, supposedly, with Scott. Well, that night turned into... my daughter didn't come back, and when she did come back, she was married.
Wow, and when did that happen? Once again, approximately, what year?
It was within a month to 2 months. He had convinced my daughter to marry him.
All right, so we may be once again talking about 2018 or something like that?
Somewhere around in that area, yes.
Right, okay, so they become a couple. He gets out of jail, and not long after he gets out of jail for whatever he did, they became a couple, and they get married.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And how much interaction did you have with them after they got married? Interaction with Scott? What were they doing? Where were they living, etc.?
They were still in Clearwater, and apparently Scott had been staying with one of his friends in Clearwater as a roommate. That's all I knew. Okay. So what I did is I had been living in the same trailer park for like 12 years, off and on. And I had asked my landlord, because he had an available place, if possible, my daughter and her husband. And my landlord was also a good friend of the family's, and he knew everything. So he was like, yeah. So I had took some talking Scott into but we convinced Scott to let Ashley move over here, by me. And they moved in. I lived in trailer number 10, and they moved into number 7. Now, my oldest son lived right next door in number 6. Yes.
Okay.
So now I got my daughter close to me.
Yeah, good.
The abuse started, I would say, it didn't take him long at all. Once he felt comfortable around my oldest son and knew my oldest son's schedule, because my oldest son's an electrician and worked out of town a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Once he got comfortable with everything, then I started noticing abuse. My daughter would come over with bruises, trying to hide them. When questioned about it, it was always some kind of excuse.
Okay.
But,
okay.
And I'm not going to lie to you, from the day that I first laid eyes on that man, I felt it. I just knew there was something about him that wasn't right.
Okay, well, it might have also been shaded by the fact that you knew that he was in jail not long before the two got married, right? That obviously had something to do.
Well, actually, I didn't find all that out until my youngest, like I said, my daughter kept it from me.
Okay.
My youngest daughter did a background on Scott.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that's when we found out, oh Lord, what has she got into?
Okay. All right, so she's with this guy, and to your knowledge, did the police ever get called? I mean, you're saying she was abused. Did the police ever show up at their place to kind of separate them and everything? They did.
Oh yes, right down to even at one point in time there was a restraining order against him to where he wasn't supposed to come near Ashley, but it was always that. I promise, Ash, I'll change. I'll get help. I'll do this. I'll do whatever you want me to do. And my daughter would fall for it every time. Every single time.
Did you also tell me at one point they moved to Kansas?
Yes. This is, now, you're going to have to spring forward. We end up losing our places. My landlord gets sick with cancer, finds out he's dying.
Wow.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here trying to light a cigarette. Anyway... And we find out that we're losing our places to live.
Wow.
Scott has got a sister that lives in Kansas, and that's where he decides to take my daughter. He didn't even really give her a chance to say goodbye to the family or anything. He just up and loaded her up. And they were there, a few months. And... he acted out at his sister's, put it that way. His sister walked in and seen him trying to choke my daughter out. So she kicked her brother out, and he ended up coming back. Okay.
They came back to Florida, and where did they end up? And once again, just to put this kind of in a timeline, when was this, and where did they move once they came back to Florida?
They've been here for 2 years. They didn't move anywhere Pacific. My youngest son kept begging Ashley and Scott to come stay with him to start with, right off from the beginning when we lost our places. And Scott kept denying. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you this.
That's all right. I just want to keep this nice and simple. That they came back and they didn't really have a home. They were kind of moving around.
He was bouncing around with her.
Okay. All right.
Never kept her close to the family. That's one thing we noticed too. I mean, even when I would offer to get a motel close by me and stuff, he was always like trying to keep her like a couple of hours away from everybody.
And when you say a couple hours, what location? You're where and they are where?
I'm in Lake Wells, and he would take her to like Lithia. They ended up in Tampa at one point in time, but I mean, just little distant of ways. Even one time he even took her out to Clearwater, back out to Clearwater.
Mm-hmm. Where I live now.
And I can't drive. I'm partially paralyzed. So he knows that I'm kind of stuck. I mean, if she calls, Mom, I need you, I have to get one of her siblings to come get me to go get her, It's one of those type deals.
Okay. And how often would you see Ashley at all? Or was this like not possible to do given the situation?
Very rarely. When I did get to see her, it would be on video chat. And he even got to the point where my daughter wasn't allowed to have her own phone with internet or anything like that. He got her one of those Dollar General store flip phones. In order to be able to video chat me, it had to be off of his phone while he was present. I did,
I see.
which I think I sent to you. I'm not sure if I sent them to you or not. I did. The last time I physically got to see my daughter by video chat, he had used her really bad. She was in the back seat of the vehicle he was driving, and she was on his phone, using his phone. And without speaking, she was just showing me the abuse, which was very obvious. I was taking pictures as fast as I possibly could.
Yeah. This is the picture, like with a cut finger or something like that?
He tried to slice her with a butcher knife, and she grabbed the butcher knife. And when she did, he sliced her fingers with it.
Okay.
But it was right after that they ended up in Tampa at the Red Roof Inn.
All right. So we're now working up. Well, being that COVID was brought up earlier, what did they do during COVID? What were they doing this time? Were they locked down somewhere or what?
Not really. No, just kind of.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I'm thinking. I mean, like I said, I'm horrible with dates. I really am.
That's all right. That's all right.
I'm gonna say that. Not really. Kind of bouncing around. I mean, after we lost our places over there, he kept bouncing around with her. There was never nowhere really steady.
Okay. And what were they doing for money during this time?
That's one thing. All the way up until we lost our places, Ashley did work. She worked for Taco Bus. And Scott, he worked. He worked for some bug company, spraying yards and stuff.
Okay.
He made her quit her job when, they started bouncing around and everything, but he seemed to maintain his for a while. Excuse me. All the way up until just about the time that Ashley came up missing.
Okay. All right, but so that's what they were doing for money, but she really actually wasn't working at the time of her disappearance.
No. Like I said, when they started bouncing around, I mean, she ended up losing her job, of course.
Okay. All right, just a few questions. I kind of already asked you this, but I'll ask you again. How often were you talking to Ashley? Obviously, seeing her, yes, but not in person. You were seeing her like over the internet.
Video chat, mainly.
Okay. And also, regarding in 2022, which of course is the year of her disappearance, that year, how worried were you about her?
Oh, God.
Quite a
when
bit.
She came up missing?
No, before that, just that year.
She's sick. Worried sick.
Sick,
I automatically, when I got those pictures that I told you about.
Yeah.
I automatically then tried, I hate to say it, but tried to get the cops to do something to him then.
Yeah.
But of course I can't. It has to be her. Mm-hmm. They don't care what I've got as far as proof of abuse or anything like that, her mental conditions. They didn't care.
How do you think she was managing? Of course, you already talked about even well before she and Todd were a couple, managing her mental health issues. How was she seemed to be managing that in 2000?
She was down. She was going. I'm not going to lie to you. I could tell.
Yeah.
That she was getting bad. I mean, he had her in a state to where she looked horrible, and she cried constantly. Did nothing but cry constantly. I could tell that my daughter was going to a deep depression. I begged her and begged her and begged her to please come to me. Please.
Yeah.
And she kept telling me, I can't, Mama. He won't let me. I can't, Mama. And,
yeah.
I mean, points she would tell me that he threatened her life, that he'd kill her, he'd kill the kids. She was scared. She was terrified of him. And he had her believing that he had more control than what he's got.
Yeah.
I mean, what I mean by that is like mafia style or something,
Right. Okay. I'm guessing
I'm
that's
trying to
that's all right. I know it's that's fine. I just want to make clear something though, that were her kids ever around Todd, or did Matt pretty much keep Scott? I'm sorry, Scott. Were the kids ever around Scott, or did Matt really keep a lockdown on that to make sure the kids were never around him?
Before, we actually knew Scott's demeanor and everything. He was around the kids a couple times. The second visit, he made a mistake because he put his hands on my daughter, and the oldest daughter seen it, witnessed it. When the oldest daughter intervened, apparently he threatened her, and like I said, that was in Plant City. My oldest granddaughter ran to me, let me know what was going on. I immediately contacted the biological father, and from there we made it to where Ashley visited the kids at my place. She came and stayed at my place with the kids. The kids was not allowed around Scott whatsoever.
Okay. All right, that then brings you, kind of already mentioned it, this Red Roof Inn in Tampa, which is actually on the east side of Tampa. I'm over there by on the Gulf of Mexico. This is the opposite side of Tampa. But we now go up to September 9th of 2022, and you get this call from Scott. Please describe what happened.
It's about 5:30 in the morning, September the 9th. And he calls me and tells me that him and Ashley had gotten into a fight, that he was going to work, that she would be locked out of the motel room, that she would not be able to get a key because he did not register her on the registry. And that was basically it. And I says, oh my God, okay. I says, please call me when you get off of work. Let me know what's going on, basically. I sat by my phone in hopes, because I know my daughter. I was like, yeah, my daughter's going to find a way to call me. She's going to call me, Mama, come get me. So I'm already getting a hold of her siblings, trying to line up a ride for one of us to go get her. Okay. I sat by the phone all day long, no call. No call from Ashley at all.
Okay.
About five-ish, somewhere around in there in the evening, I knew that Scott was getting off of work, and I called him. He said he was just making it back to the motel, and when he got there, that, he'd call me back. He calls me, tells me that there's no Ashley, that he's going to get a shower, grab something to eat, and that he would go looking. Mm-hmm. And he did so. I stayed on the phone with him most of the time. He went out riding around, no luck finding Ashley. He goes back to the motel. Mm-hmm. I knew that we couldn't I was told that we couldn't make a police report till somebody's missing for 24 hours.
Yeah.
So I had no choice but to sit back and wait till the next day. The next day comes, and I begged Scott to call police, make a police report. I'm not on the phone with him, so I don't hear the police report that he makes. He makes a missing persons report, and he lies in the missing persons report.
All right, we'll get to that. I just want to ask you some questions. I have to ask. At the time, now we know we're going to eventually talk about this picture that was taken a couple months later that we're going to examine quite closely. Yes. But on September 9th, 2022, did you have a doubt maybe that Scott was not telling you the truth? Were you open to the idea that, because we talk about this a lot on Unfound, where guys say, yeah, my wife ran off, but we really don't, we the public really don't believe that? Or was that maybe in your mind as well?
Oh, right off rip. Right off rip. I mean, if it wouldn't have been, like you said, the picture that you're fixing to talk about, if it wouldn't have been for that, I'd still tell you that I believe that he did something to my daughter.
Okay. All right. So, but he says, of course, you're not there. He's just telling you that he's going out and driving around, but it very well may be he's just hanging out at the Red Roof Inn watching.
He could have been sitting in his car with the wind blowing and just feeding me a line.
Right. All right. So we don't know this. That's just what he's telling you.
Yes.
Okay. But he did go eventually on his own. Maybe I should ask you this. Did Scott on his own ever call you before?
Just off a rip?
Yeah, he called you to say that, of course, allegedly Ashley ran off. But in years that they had been together, did he just call you out of the blue anytime just to talk or anything?
No. He knew I didn't like him.
Okay. All right, that's all I'm trying.
There was no.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to establish.
There whatsoever. That man had no business even thinking about calling me.
All right, so it's very rare if that's the first time that he ever called you just on his own.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's important. Okay, moving on. So he finally does file this report, missing persons report. Who did he file it with? Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office or Tampa Police or who?
Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department.
All right. But you're going to have to explain. We'll get into his description, and you already kind of gone into that. We'll get into that in a little bit. But there was a story that you told me that right around that same time that he was on his phone and he said, I saw you kill her or something
that's the gentleman. That is a gentleman that was pacing back and forth in front of the motel room.
All right, why don't you talk? When did that happen? On September 9th, September 10th?
It was September the 10th. It was after the police report was made.
Okay. Why don't you explain that call to the listeners, please?
Okay. After the police report was made, He's in the motel room at this point in time. Once again, he's fixing to get a shower or whatever he's fixing to do. And he is supposedly going to go out looking for Ashley. I failed to mention that when he told me that Ashley had ran out of the room, she was supposed to have ran out of the room with nothing, not even the shoes on her feet. Okay? Now, let's bring it back forward. He's in the motel room, and there's this man, he says, that's pacing back and forth in front of this motel room. And I told him, I says, well, maybe he might know something about Ashley. I says, go out there. I said, he might not know what door to knock on. So I'm on the phone with him, and he goes out there, and he asks the guy, he says, excuse me, he says, have you seen my wife? And shows him a picture off the phone. And I heard it plain as daylight. The man says, yeah, I seen you kill your wife and put her in the swamp. Now, apparently there's a retention pond out in front of the Red Roof Inn, where they were at. My instant reaction was to scream, oh my God, call the cops. Scott yells, F that. If that son of a bitch hurt my wife, I'm going to kill him. And he hangs up the phone with me and runs out to wherever this swampy area is. I called the cops, or the cop back, an officer back out. Before the officer can show back up, Scott calls me back and tells me we skipped a part about a blanket. But I had given my daughter a blanket, and Scott couldn't find it when he was in the motel room after Ashley came up missing. And he had found it out in that swampy area.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
I need to ask you, just to clarify this, what this guy said again. Was this stranger saying that he saw Scott kill Ashley, or what?
Yes, that was his words. I seen you kill her and put her in the swamp, was his exact words.
I see. Huh. And then, so he's saying that right as Scott has there with the phone, and so this guy's saying, yeah, I know what happened. That's what he says happened.
Plain as daylight, plain as daylight. When the officer got there, the gentleman that was pacing back and forth in front of the hotel room was sitting by a dumpster that's by this retention pond out in front of the motel. Once again, I'm on the phone with Scott. I'm listening to everything. The officer comes back and tells Scott that he basically can't take the man's word on anything. The man has got mental conditions, and the man is claiming that he doesn't know Scott and has never even spoke to Scott, never been up that way or anything. So the man's word doesn't mean nothing to the officer at this point in time.
Okay. All right. So, of course, when a guy's pacing back and forth, and maybe that we shouldn't be surprised, maybe that the guy did have some sort of mental issue or something, but that's what he said. You heard him say it.
I heard him say it plain as daylight.
All right. And once again, remind everybody, how did Scott react to that?
He was like, when I yelled, call the cop, he said, F that if that son of a bitch did anything to my wife, I'll kill him. And he ran out to the retention pond area to check it out.
All right. Once again, though, you weren't there. That's just Scott saying allegedly what he did.
I'm hearing and what's going on from my side at this point in time.
Right. Okay. All right. So we have that. All right. So that call, and like you said, the police did get to talk to this guy, and they just did not take this guy seriously.
No, they said he had some kind of mental. I mean, even apparently the motel people were aware of this guy. He hung out there all the time, and they even claimed that the man had some kind of mental problems.
Yeah. Okay. Let's now move up to September 12th, 2022. So she went missing in the early morning hours of September 9th. We're now to the 12th, so I guess 3 days later. And Scott calls you again, though, and claims that the police actually found Ashley. Why don't you tell the listeners about this?
I get a phone call from Scott saying that an officer had called him, said that he made contact with Ashley at the 7-Eleven in Ybor off of 7th Avenue. Scott was headed there at that point in time to see if he could locate her. I had called my daughter, my youngest daughter, told her what Scott had said. My youngest daughter had got on the internet to see if she could find anything. And they had closed out the case. I mean, it blinked of an eye. I just said found across her missing persons report. And on the missing persons report, when we was reading it, is when we noticed that Scott gave all the wrong information about his wife, as far as the description was totally off. I don't even know how this officer even knew to approach this girl to see if she was my
All
daughter.
right, please give the contrasting descriptions. If you could describe Ashley and then describe what Scott said.
My daughter has got blonde hair and the babiest blue eyes you ever wanted to see. Pale skin, and she's tall and slender. The description that he gave was brown hair, brown eyes, and the height of her was short, and the weight was kind of chunky. Totally wrong description.
All right, so he's the one that made the missing persons report on the 10th, and in the description part, I'm guessing, I don't know if he would have filled it out himself or some officer isn't filling it out, but that's what the description ended up being, what we would say the opposite.
Yes, totally the opposite.
Okay. But regarding the September 12th call, Ashley was not found there.
No. Once again, like I said, I stayed on the phone with him constantly. I felt in my gut there was something that he was not telling me. That he knew something.
Makes
and
all the sense in the world.
I felt like I had to tell him. I had to stay on him constantly.
That makes all the sense in the world. Nobody's going to blame you for that. I think that's how anybody would have reacted, whether Scott had a criminal record or not. I would just want to state that for the record. I think anybody under this situation would be suspicious. Makes all the sense in the world. I don't care if Scott was a pillar of the community. It doesn't matter either way. But of course, on the 12th,
I stayed on top of him. I did. I stayed on top of him as much as possible could.
Yeah.
Gathering up every ounce of any little evidence that I thought had anything to do with anything.
Right.
When he got to the 7-Eleven, I told him, I said, go in and ask the store clerk. Maybe, Ashley walked around behind the building or something. Go ask. He went in there with her picture, showed picture. Now, I don't know what picture at this point in time that Scott is showing of my daughter. Okay? If it was anything like the picture that he gave in the missing persons report, it doesn't look like my daughter.
Okay.
And I did hear the young lady say no, that she didn't recognize Ashley. I was like, all right. So we're back off to square one. He's out driving around, supposedly. No Ashley, no Ashley.
Okay.
Excuse me.
All right, and so this, I guess what we're saying, this is September 12th, 2022 sighting can't be confirmed.
No.
But instead, though, but
if you got to go by what an officer says, then you got to go by what they say. But no, to me it wasn't. I even questioned what would make the officer, if you're riding by the 7-Eleven and you're looking for a brown-haired, brown-eyed girl, what would have made you stop? And my daughter was supposed to be standing outside the 7-Eleven. What would have made you approach a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl?
Right.
And I was told that they have their ways. I said, if she doesn't have any identification on her, I said, I don't know what her state of mind is. I said, how did y'all identify my daughter?
Yeah.
And they told me that they have their ways, is what he told me, that they would ask personal questions. If she couldn't answer those, that they had this fingerprinting device, and they could have used that, but they could have never confirmed to me how they found out for sure that it was my daughter.
But on the strength of that September 12th encounter, they closed the missing persons case.
Yes.
Shut it down.
So now I've got no help, no nothing.
Wow.
But through the authorities, I should say.
All right, this sounds like a disappearance recovered. Chris Turner's disappearance in Las Vegas from back in 2016, where the same thing happened, where he was allegedly identified. They closed the case, and they should have never done that. So I guess this happens in a lot of different places. That's just one example that comes to mind. All right, so according to then Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, they kind of washed their hands of the whole thing.
Yes, it was a done deal right then.
Okay. All right, so after that, in your opinion, does Scott still continue to try to find her? They're saying that she was found, but of course she's not in the company of Scott. So what does he continue to do? Of course, you're not around it, but as best as you can tell.
Supposedly out driving around, okay, looking for her.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you this. If I can't, then, just tell me no.
Well, we can. This is why we don't do live interviews. You just tell me, and then I'll decide whether we can keep it in or not.
Okay. There's a few part of while they were at the motel that we skipped that was kind of crucial, even though we know about the picture on November the 17th. Mm-hmm. While he was at the motel, he junks his car, rents a U-Haul. I've got all the receipts on that. Rents a U-Haul, has this U-Haul for over a month. All right? And he's out now looking for her in this U-Haul instead of his regular vehicle, supposedly. Okay, looking for her, I should say.
Okay. How do you know that he rented this U-Haul? How did you get to the receipts?
He sent it to me. He found
He
it to be
did.
a joke. Huh?
He did. He sent you the receipts for the U-Haul.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, he junked his car at the motel. All right. And then September, I think the receipt is September the 23rd, is when he rents the U-Haul. And he has this U-Haul for over a month. He accumulated a bill, an outrageous bill. He kept calling the U-Haul company and would make up lies to keep it for extra extended time. And what I found really weird is that he came all the way to Lakeland, over in the Cumbie area, to rent this U-Haul to go all the way back to Tampa.
So you, just to make clear, you have these receipts still?
Oh yes, I will. I can send it to you.
Yeah, please do. I want you to send it. As long as we have receipts, as long as we have receipts, we can talk about it.
Oh,
So
yes. Believe me, hon, when I say I made sure I kept evidence of everything.
Okay.
And when I mentioned the blanket at the motel, all right.
Yeah.
I forgot to tell you that he had claimed that his dog, that was an older dog that he had forever and was fully house trained, had urinated on the bed, and he had turned all the blankets in to maid service and was looking for a blanket that I had given my daughter and couldn't find it. Well, it was found out in the swampy area.
Okay. All right. I don't know what to make of that, but we can certainly.
Everything, every little detail that I had, I hate to say it, was looking like he murdered my daughter. It really was.
I can see why you thought that. At least in September of 2022. And like I said, we're going to get to this picture here in a moment.
Oh, it gets even crazier in October.
All right, it does. All right, so she goes missing. He uses his car for a while. Then you have these receipts that show he got a U-Haul instead. All right, which seems like a very inefficient way to go around looking for somebody. Being that it's one of those big trucks or whatever else. Okay. As far as what you are doing, putting Scott out of the picture, your other children, are you riding around?
Yes. Me and my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter, we all went to Ybor. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Ybor. We went to the 7-Eleven and asked questions. We passed out flyers all in throughout Ybor, even this one park that they call the Chicken Park. They say that a lot of homeless, hang out in that area or what have you.
Okay.
Underneath bridges, everywhere. That's where mostly all the homeless people in Tampa, it seems like, stay, is up and underneath bridges.
Yeah.
We went to the Trinity Cafe. I was told that they give out food and they help with clothing items and what have you at this place called the Trinity in Tampa. Churches. Just about every church within that area. I went in there and I asked about Ashley because I know my daughter. My daughter will go to a church in a heartbeat for help. We kept running into dead end. Nobody's seen her. Nobody recognized her. Nobody.
I should ask you before, this place that she was seen on September 12th, how far is it from the Red Roof Inn?
Oh, wow. That I don't know, to be honest.
Because I do know that the Red Roof Inn, I've looked at the location in Ybor. You said this sighting was in Ybor City?
Yes.
All right, so that's kind of still on the east side of Tampa, kind of still. So maybe it's close, maybe it's a little far, but it can't be too far. All right, so you're all looking around. You're going to these places that you think she would go. Yes. Who knows?
Now, my oldest boys, they went to the actual motel and searched the swampy area and everything. They wouldn't let me go with them.
Yeah, to go I can understand that.
Yeah.
Red Roof Inn didn't have any video that would be helpful?
Honey, of all the cameras in the whole motel, how about it just happened that the one on the floor that my daughter and Scott was in was broken. Somebody had destroyed it and broken.
That's a horrible coincidence, but maybe that it was destroyed and everything maybe, of course, tells us what kind of location it was. Somebody vandalizing a video. So that's not helpful. Your opinion, would you say the person who manages it or whatever, were they somewhat helpful at all? Any
not really
paperwork regarding Scott?
No, you could tell that they were kind of just wanting to be left out of the situation, like they did not want the attention from the police or anything.
Okay. Regarding this time of mid-September to mid-November of 2022, how often were you talking to Scott, and did you ever actually see him in person?
Never seen him in person, and I was on the phone with him every single day.
You were.
Every single day, every chance that I had, I was on the phone with that man. I had to know every single second, what are you doing? You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I got obsessed. I stayed on him like a leech, like a leech.
And
It's
none
the
of
best
your
way to
other
describe it.
none of your other children had any encounters with him during these search operations.
No, probably for the best.
Okay. All right, let's now move up to November 17th of 2022. This is a hugely big day. Why don't you describe what happened that day?
Well, first of all, am I allowed to tell you some things that happened in October, and I've got the evidence?
Let's just go right to the picture, because it's a very big
Okay.
part. This, because everything that we talked about kind of is the setup for this, because
I know the picture knocks everything out.
yeah, kind of,
It does.
because
it does. The picture kind of knocks everything out. November the 17th, my daughter-in-law's brother, Jacob, young man, just got a new job, and he was working off of Nebraska Avenue in Tampa. And he rides one of those vans, I guess, that they take the crew van or whatever.
Okay.
And he wasn't driving it. Down Nebraska Avenue, Yukon in Nebraska is where the picture was taken. He sends a picture. I don't get the picture right away because I wasn't on my phone, but my daughter-in-law does. My daughter-in-law calls me and says, Jacob, got a picture of Ashley. Oh my gosh, Mom, look at your phone. And I look at the picture, I blew it up and everything to confirm, yes, that's my daughter. And like I said, it was on the corner of Yukon and Nebraska Avenue. Well, Jacob did not really know the situation between Scott and the family all that well.
Unfortunately,
Yes. Okay, because, he's not really my family. He's my daughter-in-law's family. So he made the mistake also of sending it to Scott. Well, of course, Scott's the first one that's heading out that way.
Okay.
To see if he can get her. And no luck. Me and my daughter-in-law, we go out there, and I asked, matter of fact, I can even remember the man's name. His name was Terry, that was running the tire shop. And he looked at Ashley's picture and once again told me, no, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I don't recognize her.
Huh.
And there's a Dollar General store that's right practically on top of that tire shop. I even went there and asked them. They didn't recognize Ashley. Home Depot's not that far from there. Nobody in that area had seen her.
Okay. But this guy just happened to be riding down the street, thought that
I'm sorry, yes. He's in a company van. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked.
That's all right. Yeah, that's the part we really need to understand, how this photograph
he's in a company
took apart.
van,
Yes.
and he snaps a picture, and he sends it to everybody's phone. His boss, the one that was driving, wouldn't stop for Jacob. He had to get to wherever this job site was. But he did allow Jacob, once he got to the job site, to take a 15-minute break to go see if he could locate Ashley, get her.
Yeah.
And by the time that Jacob went back to where he had seen Ashley, she was gone.
Okay. And just in general, why don't you, I'm hoping everybody gets to see the picture, but just in case, why don't you describe the picture to the listeners as best you can?
Yes, it looks like Ashley had been at a church or somewhere that gave her a bunch of items. She has got like a little buggy that you could pull things around in.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like a bunch of clothing, a foam-looking mattress, just odds and ends. But it does look like she did accumulate some clothing and, like I said, a little foam mattress, a blanket. The clothing that she even had on, I didn't recognize. Those are not Ashley's clothing. The shoes that she had on her feet, you could tell are too small. They're folded over and her foot's hanging out of them. So I can tell that, she went somewhere and got some donations, is what it looked like to me.
Okay. Now, we should be clear, though. Once again, everybody knows I've seen the picture at the point we're doing this interview. But unfortunately, her face is not pointed right at the camera. No. It's kind of like a side view.
Yes.
All right, but you did tell me that you zoomed in on it, and she does have some distinguishing features like tattoos and everything, and you believe that those tattoos or markings or whatever you want to call them on this woman go in line with Ashley.
Yes.
Please describe what those things are.
She has got 3 small hearts on her left hand in between her thumb and her index finger. and it just happens to be that hand you can see in the photo. You have to blow it up. You can't really see the tattoos that good, but you can see what looks like mud is the best way I could describe it, and that's all I needed to see. And I'm like, yep, okay, that's the tattoo. But me, I guess, being a mom, I know that's my daughter. You know, there's no doubt in my head. That's my baby girl.
Right. And it should be said that I think anybody that looks at this picture is going to know this. There's something that doesn't seem right about it. It does seem like this woman is homeless given everything that she has on standing there on the street. This does not look like a woman who just went shopping at the mall or somewhere and came out with a bunch of bags. It looks different than that.
No. She does. She looks like she's living transit, like she's living out there on the streets, is what it looks like in the photo.
All right. So this guy, unfortunately,
I'm not even going to kid you. To be quite honest, when I seen the photo, I thought, oh my God, she looks so much healthier and better than what she did when she left Scott. Last time I seen her with Scott.
That's true, because as everybody will see in the picture, that the clothes look clean, her hair looks clean. She doesn't look like your stereotypical, I guess, homeless person, no matter what gender.
Yes.
All right, so that is certainly true. Unfortunately, though, this Jacob guy sent the picture to Scott, and is your understanding that Scott got that picture and went immediately to that area?
Yes.
Okay. And did you talk to him at that day, like later in the day on November 17th, to see if he went there, and what did he say happened when he got there?
As soon as I knew he was on his way, you best believe I was on that phone with him every second.
Yeah. I bet. Second. And what does he say? Once again, just his word. What does he tell you when he gets to that location?
Basically the same thing. Couldn't find her. Could not find her.
Okay. I have to ask you, other people who, like her siblings or anybody else who knew, outside of Scott, of course, anybody else who knew Ashley well, for example, her ex-husband, Matt, the father of her children, Matt, did everybody look at that picture, and did all of them also think that it was Ashley, or was there a little bit of a question mark in some of their minds?
No. There's no doubt whatsoever as far as that photo that it's Ashley.
Okay. Now, listeners should know that, to remind everybody, this is approximately 2 months after Scott says she ran away from the Red Roof Inn. And it also is important to know that this location on Nebraska is nowhere near where the Red Roof Inn was. It's several miles away. I'm not saying you couldn't walk it in 2 months. You could. But just to be clear that this is a location like north of Tampa, whereas the Red Roof Inn is like east of Tampa. So this is very important. What about the police? Of course, they wiped their hands of the total of everything.
At this point in time, we've got no assistance whatsoever as far as authorities.
Right. Did you alert the police when this picture was taken? Did it get reopened, or what happened regarding law enforcement?
Nope. Like I said, at this point in time, we still got no help from the authorities whatsoever.
So the police at this point still not involved at all? The actual law enforcement police? Okay. All right. I also need to ask you this. After November 17th of 2022, in your opinion, would you say that Scott's interest in Ashley disappearing diminished?
Yes. Now, if you back up to November the 1st.
Okay.
All right. He has got it all over Facebook that he's in a relationship with his soulmate, and her name, am I allowed to say her name or no?
I would not.
Okay.
So he's already has a new woman.
He's met a different lady.
All right. So
he's with her.
Okay.
And, I mean, he's even making her ride around with him in this U-Haul. Even took her to the same motel, staying at the same motel with her.
Okay. All right. So a month and a half after Ashley runs off, he's with another woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And once again, I just want to ask you this question again. So he's riding around. He's claiming he's going all over the place trying to find Ashley. But after this picture was taken on November 17th, in your opinion, would you say that he did not really look for Ashley that hard?
You could tell that he was starting to die back.
Okay. All right. Let's now move on to this. Once again, she's certainly, Teresa's allowed to have her own opinion on this. And being that you were speaking to Scott every day, you certainly could gauge how interested he was in finding Ashley. In your opinion, keeping tabs on him, that after November 17th, he kind of just went off to live his own life again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let's move on to this. However, eventually, this is what where we're all going with this, and this is something that lends a lot of credence to the idea that actually it was Ashley. Tell listeners, when did you find out about this police report that was filed on the same day that the picture of Ashley was taken? That Ashley was in a car. Why don't you talk about that? What does this report say?
Yeah, on May the 25th, when I was finally able, of 2023,
Okay.
when I was finally able to file another missing persons report, and lady officer happened to let me know that on that same day, November the 17th of 2022, that she had pulled a vehicle over. The only thing that she had told me was that it was a Mexican driver, male Mexican driver,
Okay.
and that Ashley was in the back seat, seemed to be asleep. That she pulled the vehicle over for what reason I don't know, but when she went to go get the guy out of the front seat, she noticed a pill bottle that had I guess the label ripped off of it.
Okay.
Anyway, he had pills that didn't belong to him that he shouldn't have had, and she ended up arresting him. Searched my daughter, and my daughter didn't have nothing on her, and they let my daughter go.
Okay. How did they know that it was Ashley?
That I don't know. I can't tell you, hon. That again, don't know.
But this officer led you to believe, though, that it was Ashley.
Oh, yeah, she led me to believe that it was my daughter, but how she knew, I don't know.
And the reason this is important for everyone is because this happened on the same day. It happened on Nebraska Avenue, not too far from where this picture of...
Yeah, the stop was supposed to have happened at 124th and Nebraska Avenue.
Mm-hmm. Right. And this picture was taken at Nebraska and another intersection, but it was only like 2 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
It was very close. I guess in city terms, pretty close. What are the odds?
Yeah.
Okay. And you and I have already talked about maybe doing filing paperwork to find a little bit more out about this traffic stop to see if you can find out who was driving this vehicle. Yeah. So going back to just talk to the listeners for a little bit. So we might be open to the idea that, yes, Ashley really did run off in September, and then somehow she found her way to the north part of Tampa, and she met this guy, and she's riding around in this car, and he gets pulled over for whatever reason. He gets taken, but she's left without a ride. She starts walking, and that's when Jacob takes her picture.
That's not what we're estimating.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to this. All right, so this is something really to keep in mind, and of course, if you ever get that report, Teresa, sometime in the near future,
I will let you know.
I will. Yeah, we will certainly need to publicize that.
Yes.
Really try to figure this all out. So moving on, regarding November 17th again, do we know what Scott's at? He says he went and checked this out, but do we know what he did for the rest of the day? Anything like that?
Not really, no.
No. Okay.
No. I started, like I said, backing off of Scott. I started gathering up too much on my phone that had me to the point where I literally hated him. Hated his guts. Couldn't deal with him. You know, I mean, I didn't play that way, but I'm just telling the truth. You know, I couldn't deal with it no longer. Couldn't deal with him no longer.
Makes total sense.
So I kind of backed off too. And I flat gave him a piece of my mind on how I felt. Let him know what I felt. Mm-hmm. There was no hiding it. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So you just kind of became disconnected from him. In fact, you've already stated that you're, in your opinion, after this picture was taken, that's kind of Scott lost interest.
Yeah.
Okay. And how much interaction have you had with Scott since November of 2022?
Here and there, put it that way, hit and miss. Okay. He'll make false accounts or whatever, and he'll try to call me, and I'll make the mistake of answering the phone, thinking it might have something to do with my daughter because I don't recognize the number, and come to find out it's him, and I'll hang up on him. But
why is he calling you? What's he trying to say?
That's what I was going to tell you. At least once a month, he'll either try to slip into my Facebook because I have that group, or he'll try to call me. And I think it's to try to find out information, is what I think. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
Because I refuse to speak with him.
All right. That's your opinion on that. So you've never really had even a 1-minute conversation with him in the last year and a half.
Oh yeah, yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes, but I'm talking about like here, recently. I mean,
okay, in 2024.
6 months or so. I would say within the past 6 months or so.
Okay.
I have absolutely, and no, I won't talk to him. I won't have nothing to do with him.
Okay. Let's move on to that.
Yes, it would be hit and misses when we had the homicide detectives on the case and what have you. Yeah, I would talk to him just to try to feed into some more information from him. But when I got all I thought that I needed, I was done.
That was it.
I was absolutely done.
Okay. Makes total sense. Let's move on to this. This guy is named Nico. We're not going to use his last name. And in fact, we're not going to name the organization that he works for either. Really, I have to be honest, I really don't know what to make of them. I've looked them up. I've given my opinions to Teresa on that, but we're going to stay away from all of that. But this is a guy who got involved. He's a retired law enforcement, retired military, works for a group that I had never even heard of until speaking to Teresa for the first time. But how did you become acquainted with Nico?
When the police officers dropped Ashley's case the first time, and I had absolutely no help, I reached out to the internet, started, reaching out to every kind of group, missing persons group, everything that I could think of. And there was this woman named Michelle that has a group, and she was the one that reached out to Mr. Nico, and then from there, Mr. Nico reached out to me.
Okay.
And he says, hey, I might be able to help. And
so what did he do? So you actually met him in person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what did he do for you over the time that he was helping you? I understand this is from somewhere in November. I'm not sure if it was before or after the photo, but from like November of 2022 until May of 2023, what did he do?
He tried. He went just about everywhere that we did as far as Ybor and what have you. He backtracked all of our, areas that we went. But he also went back to Plant City. And he followed Scott through Plant City to different locations. He did find some things that he thought would be evidence for the police in a cemetery. He had a couple, I guess you could call them like interviews or something, where these homeless girls reached out to him. Mm-hmm. I've got all the messages and everything on that on my phone that I can also send to you. Where Scott was threatening their lives, telling them that he was going to put them in the ground next to his wife. His current girlfriend, the same. He did the same with her, and I've got messages from her. And she met with Mr. Nico scared, was going to show Mr. Nico the area where Scott had taken her and threatened her.
Okay.
But Mr. Nico, he tried. He came up with, I guess you could say like I did, a bunch of what we thought was evidence. But in the end, the officers didn't want to look at it. They didn't want to see what I had. They didn't want to see what he had. All they wanted was Scott's phone, which was like Scott's fifth phone that he had already, got since Ashley came up missing. And when they got the data off of it, they said there was nothing incriminating on it. They cleared him of everything, and him and his girlfriend ended up going to Missouri.
Okay. So my understanding that Nico and Scott, did they ever talk to each other one-on-one in person?
Oh, yes.
And what did Nico pass along to you? What did Nico pass along to you in talking to Scott? What was Nico's words?
According to Mr. Nico, after November the 17th, when the picture was taken, he says that Scott admitted to him that he met up with Ashley, that he had found her, and gave her some of her personal belongings. Amongst these personal belongings was supposed to be Ashley's Bible. Well, when Mr. Nico told me that, I knew it was a lie. And I said, no. I said, that's a lie. I mean, not calling Mr. Nico a lie, but I'm just saying it was a lie because I've got Ashley's Bible. But as far as Scott ever admitting to me that he seen Ashley after November the 17th, no. He or anybody else in my family, no.
But he allegedly, I'm going to say that one more time, allegedly told this to Nico.
Yes, and Mr. Nico kept trying to convince me that he believed that Scott's intent when they got to that motel was to kill my daughter.
Well, we don't want to get into that's just speculate. I don't want to get into that.
Oh, okay.
All right,
I
this
was
is
gonna say,
so disconnected. All I'm trying to establish is that you spoke to Scott for a time, and once again after November 17th of 2022, that he claims that he never did run into Ashley, but then for some reason he told Nico the exact opposite.
Yes.
Allegedly. Okay. All right. Could he? In this Bible story, is it possible there could have been more than one Bible that was special to Ashley or not?
Yes. I mean, she owned more than one Bible, but the one that he's referring to is the special Bible. Mm-hmm. It's a purple Bible, and it's a leatherback that was signed by my great aunt, the one that I told you that she used to admire when she was younger. It was her Bible.
Right.
So, and I've got that one.
All right. Did Nico ever try to talk to Scott about taking a polygraph, any phone records, anything like that?
No, but the authorities did.
Okay. And would, once again, Nico's opinion on this, how did he exactly track down Nico, or how did Nico track down Scott to even talk to him? Did Scott willingly, or was he confronted somewhere? Do you know?
Mr. Nico, when Mr. Nico reached out to me and was willing to help with Ashley's case and everything, he asked me if I would reach out to Scott to see if Scott would be willing to meet him out there in the area where Ashley came up missing at. And I asked Scott if he'd be willing to meet up with Mr. Nico. He said, yeah. Those two ended up meeting, having lunch. Mr. Nico befriended him. At first, he befriended Scott.
Okay. Through Nico, did Scott ever offer up an opinion as to what happened to Ashley?
Yes.
And that opinion, what was Scott's opinion?
Scott's opinion or Nico's opinion?
No, I don't want Nico's opinion. I want Scott's opinion. Yeah, did Scott ever tell me?
I misunderstood what you said. As far as Scott's opinion, no. Scott would just keep the same thing, that she ran off, that she was scared of him. He would always admit, he will never deny that he was abusive with Ashley, mentally and physically. And he would tell you, she ran because, he was abusive with her. But that would be it. As far as knowing where Ashley was or anything like that, Scott would say that he didn't know, All
right, so...
And he would and Scott tried to use Ashley's mental illness on everything.
Yeah.
Saying that, she was mentally crazy, that she could be anywhere, she probably doesn't even know who she is. And
Right. Well, that was part of her condition.
It could be, but I mean, that was the main thing, that he would play off of that.
Okay. So we have a situation, just to go through this again, where Scott claims that he did try to go to this Nebraska Avenue intersection on November 17th of 22, but he did not find Ashley. But then Nico claims that Scott told him the exact opposite. And so I guess we're to believe that Scott just tracks Ashley down that day and then lets her go.
See, like I said, I have my own personal opinion.
I know you do, but once again, we're just
like Nico and Scott.
Yep.
That was what's said between those two.
Okay. Did Nico take? Of course, he didn't know your daughter, but he saw pictures of her, and then he looked at this picture taken on November 17th. Was it Nico's opinion that it was also Ashley?
No, he tried to convince me that it wasn't my daughter.
Is that right? Well, why don't you talk a little bit more about that? What was his opinion on? Of course, he didn't know her, but what was his reasoning, do you think? What did he say?
Honestly, I don't know. I honestly don't know. He tried to convince me that it wasn't my daughter, kept telling me that I needed to look at it really hard and study it more, that he didn't believe it was her. I don't know how else to tell you anything without telling you what he kept trying to convince me of, which apparently I can't do. So
I don't want to get into that because
like
I said, I don't know. I know what to make of Scott. I'm not sure what to make of Nico in this organization and everything.
Yeah.
My opinion on them is that they don't have enough disappearance experience to really start to making, to me, their words on their theories on what happened is no better than somebody off the streets.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm just going to leave it at that. But it's interesting to me that Nico's, in his opinion, it was not Ashley in the picture, but then he's hearing this story from Scott saying, I saw her on that day.
Yeah.
So even that conflicts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's if I'm allowed to say this without saying anything,
Go ahead.
incriminating.
I can always edit it out, but please.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it could be said like this, if I have any hope while Mr. Nico was on the case, he would knock it back down, if that helps any.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let's move on to this, though. So he worked on this, and you can't remember if he got involved before or after the picture was taken?
It was after.
After, okay.
Yeah, it was after, because I had to tell him about it.
All right, but he worked for you now. You didn't pay him, did you?
Oh, no.
All right,
No.
okay, very good.
But they do take donations and everything, and they do let you know about that.
I know they do, and I'm just gonna stay away from that. Because once again, I don't know what to make of this organization. Go into their website and everything else. And this is probably what we're going to talk about next. Is the reason I don't want their name mentioned. Nico finally decided he did all he could do. Did he ever give you an explanation on why he quit?
No.
So how did this partnership with Nico end in May of 2023? Describe it to the listeners.
Honestly, I don't know. Like I said, we had set up for the interview for the news, and they had the cameras and everything set up over there in Plant City outside the courthouse, and the police station's right next door. And excuse me, the deal was I was to try to file another missing persons report, and if they denied me, it would be on TV, and more or less try to embarrass them, I guess. I don't know what the intent was. But they ended up allowing me to file the missing persons report. While we were talking to the detectives and everything, Mr. Nico was talking to an officer, tried to show him, I guess, the evidence and stuff that he had found. And once again, the officers didn't act like they really cared about what we had found or anything like that or had on us. So they kind of brushed Mr. Nico off. And my personal opinion, I don't think he's used to being treated like that by the authorities, because usually,
Okay.
I don't know how to word it, but from that day forward, I heard from him twice. He wanted to know if there was any updates from the homicide investigators, and I told him that they got a DNA sample from me, and I had to sign for dental release. And after that, that was it. I ain't heard from Mr. Nico. I tried to reach out to him a couple times because I had a scammer get a hold of me. Thank goodness I didn't fall for that, but I almost did. And I was kind of scared because the scammer had me believing that my daughter was being held, and I couldn't get a hold of a detective at the time, so I thought Mr. Nico would know something about it. But anyway, I reached out to him a couple times and didn't get no response back.
Okay, and when was the last time you spoke to him?
Maybe May the 27th, 28th.
So almost a year ago.
Yeah,
10 months ago.
Long time.
Okay.
He has not even contacted me at all to see if there's, if actually nothing.
Okay.
I ain't heard nothing.
All right, and once again, we're not going to get into the name of this other disappearance, which is also unsolved. But in your opinion, you had told me that in your opinion, he had dropped you because he wanted to move on to something that was more high profile.
Yes, a new case that had came up.
I see. All right, and so maybe now the listeners are also understanding why I don't want to mention this group publicly, but we'll mention his name, and of course, we're only using his first name. So he did this work. He was working for free. I guess you can't debate that, but the listeners, maybe you don't know this, Teresa, but when it comes to these types of organizations or private investigators and things, I don't hold them in very high regard. Because I don't believe they have enough experience to be going around and making proclamations, because really they don't know that much about disappearances. I can appreciate the energy that they bring to it, but at some point you have to have a little of experience and knowledge too. And that's where they're usually lacking. So he hasn't tried to check in any updates, nothing.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
My youngest daughter and my aunt believed that it was all about publicity, and when he couldn't get the publicity from me that he gets from the others, that it was a washout. He was no longer interested in me and what he could do for the family.
Okay.
Or I should say what we could do for him.
Right. I gotcha. It's very, very common. All right. So what is the current situation here? So at least according to NamUs and other places, of course, it seems the at least the popular opinion though is that November 17th, that was Ashley.
The last time that Ashley actually was seen.
Okay. And what has Scott done with his life since November of 2022? I think you said he moved to Missouri or somewhere. What has he done?
Yeah, he's been all around. I did stay, unfortunately, here maybe about a month ago. I had to block her because Scott was slipping through her Facebook and everything to try to get to me. But I stayed in contact with his oldest daughter, Scott. Scott has 2 children himself. And the oldest daughter and me were kind of close. And she would tell me things, what was going on with her dad and everything. He went to Missouri. His mother lives in Missouri. He went to Missouri. Well, first he took his current girlfriend to his sisters in Kansas. They end up getting kicked out of there. They go to Missouri to his mama's. They get kicked out of there. He leaves her, and she goes to some shelter over there in Missouri. He ends up taking off to Arizona to meet up with his friend Trevor. He's bouncing around, is the best way I can say it. He's bouncing around.
All right, so
he ends up going back to her in Missouri, and last I knew that's where they were at.
Okay. How do you know all this?
Through his daughter.
Through his daughter. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Scott has a daughter from a prior relationship or something.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Would you say that he and his daughter have a good relationship or no?
Oh, no.
No? Okay. All right. And I also have to ask, any other names? Of course, Scott is prominent. He was the man in Ashley's life. They're married. I guess they're still married on paper, Teresa?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Of course, he's going to be. We have to talk about him. He's the one that called you, said that Ashley ran off. I mean, we have to talk about that. We have to use his name and all of that. He does have a criminal record. It's for all the public to see. But if any other names besides Scott's come up as possibility, somebody who Ashley might have known, might have run into, anything like that. Maybe I should go back to Nico for a second. Did he ever find any other men who Ashley might have run into? Anything?
No.
None.
No. Nobody.
Okay.
And might I add too,
Go ahead.
that Ashley has no friends, no family, or anything that we were even aware of in Tampa. I mean, none of us are even from the Tampa area, hung out in the Tampa area or anything.
Right. But we do have this story that still seems like a good lead if we're to believe it actually was she in that car.
Yes.
But if you can find out who the driver was,
the only thing I can think of is maybe she was catching a ride. I don't know.
Yeah.
And to be honest, with Ashley's conditions, that scares me because I do know that she's vulnerable. And I'm not going to sit here and tell the public that it is very possible. My daughter could have gotten a vehicle with a stranger. She could be in a different state for all I know.
Could be.
I mean, honestly, I don't know.
Right.
I honestly don't know. I don't know. All I know is that if she's alive, she survived it somehow. And that means somebody has to have seen her.
Yeah. And once people, of course, by the time they hear our voices, Teresa, people have seen that picture that I will have posted, and I know you've posted it on your Facebook page as well, that it does look, I mean, you got to say, it does look like a woman who was in a car and kind of just got left there.
Yeah.
Being with all their stuff, because you're looking at that and saying...
To be honest, I even thought about, okay, well... Did they throw all the Mexican's man stuff out of his vehicle to Ashley?
Yeah, because people are going to look at it and say, well, how was she carrying all of that stuff at one time? All right, so it does look like she got put out because somebody did get taken to jail in a car.
I mean, it almost looks like she got put out of her home and left on the street.
It does. You could easily put that caption on that picture and nobody would be surprised by it.
Yes.
I think everybody's heard your emotions through this interview, Teresa, but now specifically tell the audience about how horrible this has been.
It's killing me. It's killing me. My baby girl and me are best friends. I mean, she is my mini-me. I mean, I miss her. I need to know she's alive. I need to know she's okay. I need to get her home to her family, to get her help if she needs it. Get her back on track.
Yeah.
And get her back with us. Her babies miss her. I mean, her daughter's turning into a young adult, and she's missing it. You know, I mean, I just need to know my baby's alive. I'm scared.
When I have to ask you about her condition, when she would really be in the depths of this, I mean, going back years, even before she met Scott, would there ever be a situation where she might avoid you or ignore her family or anything like that? You know, of course, we have to remember this has only been a year and a half. That's not very long in Unfound's world. The average age of a disappearance we cover on this podcast is like 23 years old. So a year and a half, still a very good chance that she is out there. In fact, we've had some disappearances resolved where guys have been missing who were alive who were missing for a longer time than that. But did she ever kind of avoid you when she was going through this or be out of touch, anything like this prior circumstance?
No, it was totally opposite. Actually, it would be totally opposite. She'd have to have somebody close to her. And either her younger brother, me, but she'd have to have somebody with her. She can't be alone. She's that type. She gets too scared to be alone, afraid somebody's going to get her, somebody's going to hurt her.
Yeah. Would she know, of course she does know where her kids are, right? She knows where the address and everything.
Yeah,
and so I have to ask.
And nobody's telephone numbers have changed. She knows everybody's phone number by heart. I mean, nothing's changed.
Has Matt, of course, the father of her children, or anybody in his family maybe reported anything unusual? Maybe she's like in the area and maybe is afraid, anything like that? Seeing anybody on the street or anything left outside a house, anything like that?
No. God knows I wish, but no.
Yeah. And once again, don't give their exact address, but where are her children? Where does Matt live? In what part of Florida do they live?
Lakeland, Florida.
In Lakeland. All right. So if she was last seen in Tampa on Nebraska Avenue with that picture, Lakeland, I mean, it's not far. It's not close either. Certainly you could get a ride out there. It's like halfway between Tampa and Orlando. It's not like it's up in the Panhandle somewhere, which is way, way, way far away. So it's, all right, so you know about that. And the listeners should know I'm going to do at least a little bit of a YouTube video as a companion piece for this podcast to show these locations. The Red Roof Inn, where the picture was taken, and where this car got pulled over, where allegedly Ashley was in the car, so everybody can judge it for themselves. I know that you have a Facebook page set up. Why don't you tell the listeners about it right now, Teresa?
It's called Where's Ashley Living? I set it up, like I said, I didn't know what to do to get my daughter recognized by the public, to get her face out there in hopes that somebody, had seen her. And I just started reaching out to these different missing person sites and came across this lady named Joan that also does the same thing. And she's like, hey, I'll help you. Because I'm not that smart when it comes to, knowing the internet and everything. And she helped me start the group, and
great.
I try to share a different picture of Ashley every single day, Ashley with her kids, something to, show the public of Ashley's life and how much we miss her. And I try to tell little bits and pieces about Ashley so that people can, kind of feel and get into Ashley's life. And I also share other missing people, but
yeah. I should ask you this, but we didn't really talk about any phone information, but you told me that Scott would only allow her to use his phone, correct? So when she ran off, did she not have a phone or anything, or?
No. According to him, she had absolutely nothing, not even the shoes on her feet, and he had a phone. She did have a flip phone. That he allowed her to have, and it got left behind. He had it.
Okay. All right, so that's not going to be of any help either. No. Okay. All right.
I have searched her internets, her Yahoo, her Facebooks, and everything, and she's had no internet connection, been on nothing that we could find. Nothing. In years. I mean, for a long time.
Yeah. Okay. And what's interesting too is if this was Ashley in that picture on November 17th, we know of 2 months where she really contacted nobody, even though we knew she was live out there somewhere in the Tampa area. She was out there doing something, but she wasn't contacting you, her siblings, yes. Scott, anybody.
Yep.
Okay.
And the only thing I could think of is running scared. I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Right. Okay. Teresa, any final words before we complete this interview?
Just please, if you think that you recognize Ashley or have seen Ashley, please call. You know, if you don't want to call the authorities, reach out to me, message me. But please, don't just be quiet. You know, I mean, there's families out there with missing people, and we count on the public. I mean, we count on y'all to help bring our babies home. You know, y'all are a voice just like we are. If you think you see her, if you recognize her, please call somebody and help us bring our babies home. Somebody somewhere knows something. Like I said, my daughter's surviving. She's eating. She's getting clothing. Somebody knows something. Just please speak up. Please.
Teresa, thank you for being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you, Ed.
You're very welcome.
And that was my March 19th, 2024 interview with Teresa Jones, mother of Ashley Jones Linden. I thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. As I stated in the interview, I made a short video to identify the important locations for Ashley's case. I also do a wee bit of theorizing. You can find the video on Unfound's YouTube channel. I'm not going to give my opinion on the photo publicly, as I've seen many times. As soon as I make a decision on something like that, many people start agreeing with me, even if they may not think so themselves. By the way, there will be a poll in the discussion group on Facebook where I want to know what you all think about that photo. Please take part in the voting. Since I won't tell you what I think about the photograph, I'll concentrate on a couple other points that caught my attention. First, there's no proof that Scott was actually looking for Ashley. We only have what he told Teresa. But here's what I think on that. If it could be proven that Scott really was looking for Ashley between September and November, then certainly she did disappear in September and Scott was not responsible. However, if there were proof that he wasn't looking at all, then yes, that makes it very likely that Scott caused her disappearance, and anything anybody would think about the photo would be irrelevant. Second, that Scott allegedly had a new woman in his life so quickly certainly will sway many of you in a particular direction. You know, if it's true. And I can't blame you. And going back to point number 1, was Scott really driving around looking for Ashley while he had a new woman in his U-Haul truck? That is interesting. Third, and finally, just a year ago, we were confronted with the disappearance of Brandon Roberts, who I think everyone thought was dead, although not necessarily due to foul play. We were wrong. Thankfully, he was alive and still is alive. So for Ashley, even if she did run off from the Red Roof Inn, but is not the woman in the picture, we must be open to the idea that she is still alive as well. Overall, what makes this disappearance difficult is we have a person who could, possibly, allegedly, be a good suspect. You know, because his criminal record does include attempted strangulation. However, we have no facts to suspect him. Moreover, the photo, if that is Ashley, makes it much less likely that Scott is responsible. But just because everything is mixed right now doesn't mean the picture will stay that way forever. If you'd like to hear and read more of my in-depth analysis into the disappearance of Ashley Jones Linden, please go to patreon.com, sign up, and partake in the Unfound blog. Until then, I leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.